In today's video, you're about to witness a heart-touching story filled with emotion, sacrifice, and an unforgettable twist that will leave you speechless. Make sure to watch this video until the very end. Don't skip, because the final moment will truly shock you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories every week. Also, let us know in the comments below, which country are you watching this video from? We'd love to hear from you. So, without further ado, let's begin. Every night in Ethan Cole's Westchester mansion unfolded the same way, like a clock wound by grief. At 1:47 a.m., the baby monitor on his nightstand crackled to life, a thin electric breath before the first wail. Then came the chorus, Ava first, high and frantic, and Jack a beat behind, lower, hoarse, determined. Their cries threaded through the house's marble corridors, bounced off oil paintings and coffered ceilings, and slid under doors like weather. The house looked like money had solved everything, a glass-walled atrium where orchids bloomed year-round, a chef's kitchen with stone you had to seal twice, a lawn clipped by people who said, "Good morning," to the hedges. But since Lauren died last spring, nothing inside felt owned. Ethan's wardrobe was organized by a woman from a service he couldn't name. Fresh flowers arrived 3 times a week. Someone polished the brass without letting it squeak. Still, the air carried that hotel lobby emptiness, a rawness the twins could feel in their bones even if they didn't have words. He tried everything people with resources try. 3 headliners from elite nanny agencies rotated in 6-week tours, the sleep training guru with a degree from Columbia who swore by controlled comforting, the British career nanny who believed in starch and ritual, the former NICU nurse who programmed the white noise machine to ocean storm, and logged every minute on a color-coded app. Ethan paid for it all and watched all of it fail. Toy catalogs arrived with promises of therapeutic sensory integration, textured blankets, projection mobiles that threw constellations on the ceiling, a rocker that mimicked a mother's heartbeat. He bought them, assembled them, and stood helpless when the crying bulldozed right through. Pediatricians at New York Presbyterian ruled out reflux and ear infections. A child psychologist suggested grief counseling for toddlers. Primitive memory, she said. Ambient loss. He nodded because nodding was what you did when the specialist used tender words, then went home to another night of pleading with the dark. On the monitor, the soft glow from the nursery nightlight painted the crib rails the color of milk. Ethan would rise, not fully awake, and cross the hall like a man returning to a place where he misplaced himself. He knew every squeak in the floor and avoided them by instinct. He never turned on the overheads. Lauren had taught him to respect night like weather. You moved through it, you didn't blast it into day. Hey, bud. Hey, sweetheart, he murmured, voice sanded down to a hush. He offered the pacifier. Ava would take it, suspiciously, then spit it out as if offended by compromise. Jack kicked the blanket off, found it again, kicked it off. Ethan rubbed small circles on their backs, counted their breaths like rosary beads. He held them until his arms shook. In him, grief was both anchor and current, heavy and pulling. By the 3rd week of September, the house staff had learned to float around the sorrow. Mrs. Delgado, the house manager, spoke in velvet. The chef portioned meals for the fridge Ethan never opened. The grounds crew trimmed the lindens without the whine of gas engines before noon. The night shift nanny began drinking her chamomile from a travel mug to avoid the sound of ceramic on granite. People became gentle with doors. Emily Carter arrived on a Tuesday, nearly forgotten between a roofing estimate and a Zoom with Ethan's legal team. The agency called her a housemaid with hotel experience. Quiet, punctual, passed every background check so cleanly the report read like copier paper. 26 Midwestern vowels, hair pinned up like a promise she didn't want to break. She wore navy scrubs, not because she had to but because they made her invisible enough to do the job. Her first hour, she walked the house with Mrs. Delgado and said almost nothing. She memorized where the good towels lived and which sink didn't spray. She learned the citrus polish for the banister and the unscented soap for the nursery because no perfumes. She made the beds tight but not mean. Her touch was careful the way careful isn't timid, it's deliberate, present. Ethan barely registered her. People came and went. He signed checks and kept moving. He noticed only that things began to be the way he meant them to be. The nursery blackout curtains closed to the same seam each night. The baby monitor docked on the left side of the charger because his right hand reached first. The photograph of Lauren and the twins, taken before the word widower, became part of his paperwork, dusted without being moved. On her second day, Emily lingered outside the nursery at 10 p.m. When the twins' pre-cry fussing started, that silvery, restless noise that means the night is deciding what to be. She didn't intrude. She listened. Later, in the laundry room, she held the twins' sleep sacks and frowned, not at stains but at scent. Everything smelled like detergent that promised it had no smell at all. No trace of skin-warm cotton. No story. She folded the sacks anyway, smoothing each zipper with a thumb, as if smoothing could put something back. At 2:13 a.m., the night shift nanny left a note on the kitchen island. "It won't settle. I need a break." The handwriting leaned uphill like a plea. Ethan found it with a pit already open in his stomach. He crossed the hall and stood in the doorway as his children came apart in their cribs, faces blotchy, fists small and righteous. The mobile threw galaxies around the room. Polaris stuttered across the crown molding. It felt obscene, that a ceiling could have stars when nothing else did. "Mr. Cole?" The voice came from behind him, soft enough to be permission instead of interruption. Emily stood there in the dim, the pale hallway light edging her hair. No perfume. No clipboard. Just a steady look that didn't judge. "It's fine," he said, reflex snapping into place. "I've got it." She nodded once and didn't retreat. "Would you like water?" "No." He didn't mean it to sound like a door, but it did. She accepted it as a map, not an insult, and stepped sideways instead of away, into the guest bath to dampen a washcloth, into the laundry room to switch a dryer before it chirped. She took care of the sounds the house might make, so the only sounds left belonged to the children. By Friday, the British nanny resigned with brittle grace. "They require attachment, not technique," she said, and packed her neutral cardigans into boxes that smelled faintly of cedar and defeat. Mrs. Delgado's mouth tightened. She started composing a new agency email in her head. Ethan said, "Thank you. Because gratitude is what you say at the end of a service you had thought would save you." That afternoon, Emily vacuumed the runner on the back stairs the way people vacuum in libraries. On the landing, a framed family photo had tipped forward, one of those small indignities that accumulate in houses nobody laughs in. She set it upright and paused. Lauren sat on a picnic blanket in a denim jacket, sun in her hair, Ava asleep on her chest, Jack trying to eat a dandelion. Emily looked a heartbeat too long, and then kept moving. Night fell the way it always did, the Hudson a black ribbon beyond the trees, planes stitching dotted lines in the sky. Ethan ate one bite of the dinner someone had warmed for him, and then stood at the French doors staring out as if darkness could be negotiated with. Upstairs, the pre-cry began like a rumor and then, like weather, became itself. He climbed the stairs. The house held its breath. He stood in the nursery doorway while the twins' faces tipped scarlet, the tremble before the storm. He reached for pacifiers, for the well-worn script, for the exhaustion that at least meant he was doing something. Behind him, a shadow paused, then chose. Emily took 2 steps into view. In her left hand, between careful fingers, was a small square of cloth, worn, soft, embroidered with a clumsy ring of wildflowers, the kind of stitching you learn from someone who loves you enough to let the pattern be imperfect. "I know I'm just a housemaid," she said, voice low, as if confiding in the dark. "But may I try something different?" Ethan turned, startled by the quiet courage of the ask. Pride rose, a defense, a habit, and then broke against the sound of his son's next sob. He didn't trust hope. He nodded anyway, the smallest surrender a father can make. Emily dipped her head in thanks, not triumph. She wiped her shoes on the hallway mat without looking, as if there were rules about bringing the world into rooms where children sleep. Then she crossed the threshold, unhurried, sure, like someone stepping onto a church aisle she already knows by heart. The night held still, listening. Emily crossed the threshold like someone entering a chapel, slow, respectful, hands visible. She didn't head straight for the twins. First, she turned the mobile off. The constellations stopped skittering, and the room shed its artificial sky. She nudged the nursery door a finger's width wider, letting a ribbon of hallway air slide in to cool the heat that crying builds. Then she reached for the lamp and clicked it to its lowest setting until the crib rails went the soft color of cream. She crouched between the two cribs so her face met their eyes instead of looming from above. "Hi, Ava." "Hi, Jack," she said, not cooing, not baby talking, just the plain welcome you give to people you respect. In her left hand was the small square of cloth, edges worn velvet thin, wild flowers stitched in bright, clumsy loops. She warmed it in both palms first, the way you warm a spoon before it touches a child's mouth, then slid the cloth onto the mattress lying between the cribs where 4 small hands could find it without effort. Ava's fists beat the air in small outraged arcs. Jack's heels thumped, search without aim. Emily didn't rush. She laid her forearms along each crib edge and let her posture say, "I can wait longer than upset can last." Then she lowered herself onto the rug between them, flat on her back so her shoulders touched both frames, making a small human bridge the twins could feel through wood and air. She didn't sing words at first. Words can be arguments when the body is loud. She hummed, a low, steady tone that lived in her chest more than in her mouth. The note was simple and round, like something taught on a porch before electricity, something people kept because it worked. She matched her breathing to a pace slower than panic but faster than sleep, then let it fall, one notch, another, showing 2 flooded nervous systems where the exits were. Ethan stood at the doorway with every muscle braced for failure. He knew the rhythm of nights here, the false quiet before the second wave, the brief doze that tricked you into hope, the red-faced surge. He waited for it, shamefully prepared to snap, enough, at a person who had only asked to help. But the wave didn't crest. It huffed, broke, pulled back. Ava was first to find the cloth. Her fingers opened, clamped, opened again, testing textures the way a small mind assembles a map. She dragged the corner under her chin, then pressed her cheek to it as if choosing a side. Jack watched her with the startle-bright stare of a child who hates to be the last to know. His hand lifted, fell, lifted, then landed on the same square of fabric. 2 hands, 2 pulses, one soft thing bridging the space between them. Emily slid one hand to the crib's slat and tapped the wood, a heartbeat pace. Lube, dub, lube, dub. She kept the beat long enough for the room to feel organized by it. When Ava's breaths began to stack on that rhythm, Emily added a thread of melody under the hum, not lyrics, just the contour of a lullaby older than the house. Jack's legs stopped their bicycle. His face loosened from a fist to a face again. It wasn't magic. It was 5 minutes of nothing dramatic, breath measured, noise trimmed, light corrected, presence offered. But in a house where everything had been too much, too bright, too polished, too expensive, enough turned out to be the missing luxury. The crying thinned to hiccups. Hiccups thinned to sighs. Sighs dissolved into silence that was not empty this time. It felt filled with people. Ethan's grip on the doorframe eased. In the half-light he could make out the profile of Emily's nose, the line of her jaw, the way her hair had slipped from its pins and lay in a small dark comma beside her ear. She didn't look triumphant. She looked like someone doing the thing she knew how to do, the way carpenters set a door so it doesn't rub, the way nurses adjust pillows without waking you. He felt, dumbly, the urge to thank her for something he couldn't yet name. Ava's eyelids fluttered. Jack's mouth made the fishy little opening newborns do, even at 2, when they are too tired to hold their faces shut. Emily waded through both of those, and through the little pretend startles that follow, and through the soft resettling of legs as bodies test sleep for wobble. Only after that did she roll onto her side. She reached up, not into the crib, never into the crib, but to the edge of the mattress and smoothed the sheet where the cloth lay, as if ironing a path that would still be there if small hands woke and needed it. Ethan moved, one careful step in, then another. The floor did not squeak. He realized, in a detached way, that he now knew which boards could be trusted. He stopped beside the rocking chair and sat like a man at church, knees together, hatless, held by the rules of quiet. For the first time in a year, the room didn't ask him to perform. It allowed him to witness. "How did you?" he began, whispering out of habit, and then realized that finishing the question would make noise where none was needed. Emily glanced up just long enough to meet his eyes. The look said, "There will be time for sentences later." She tipped her head toward the twins, a nudge to let the proof finish writing itself. They let it. 5 more minutes. 10. The night's temperature fell a degree. The radiator pinged once, then thought better of it. Outside, late traffic stitched an indifferent line down the parkway, and even that seemed far away. Emily turned the lamp off entirely. The room accepted the dark without fear. When she stood, she did it the way nurses do, using her legs so her eyes didn't tremble the air. She eased toward the door, then paused at the dresser and, without looking, slid open the top drawer. Her hand found the lavender-free lotion Ethan had bought on a pediatrician's list. She closed the drawer without taking it. Her face held the hint of a private decision, filed, not announced. In the hallway, she finally spoke, barely above breath. "Do you have a laundry bag for keeps?" she asked. Ethan blinked. "For what?" "For what I'll wash separate," she said. "They're sleep sacks. The cloth." She nodded toward the room. "If we strip the house smell out and leave only home, it'll help. Also, the mobile is pretty, it's just busy. I'd keep it for daytime. Nights should be simpler than days." He'd paid consultants 5 figures for diagrams that never once used the word home. "Yes," he said, too fast, then steadied. "Yes. Whatever you need. I'll write it down for Mrs. Delgado." Emily tucked a fallen pin back into her hair. "If tonight holds, we'll repeat it. If it doesn't, we'll still repeat it. Same order, same light, same sound. Babies like promises kept." He felt stripped of pretense, grateful in a way that embarrassed him. "Why the cloth?" he asked, at the risk of a longer noise. "It smells like a person," she said simply. "Warm. Familiar. Not detergent." Her mouth made a shape that could have been a smile if you stood closer. "Mine's old. I'll wash it with their things a few times so it can belong here, not to me." He nodded, startled by the generosity inside that sentence. She wasn't inserting herself as savior, she was teaching the house to parent. Emily started down the corridor, then turned back with one more thought. "Set your phone to do not disturb and put the monitor on the chair, not in your hand. If you hold the alert, your body never tells your brain it's safe." She lifted a shoulder. "That goes for grown-ups too." When she left, Ethan stood alone in the dim and tried the instructions like a pilgrim offered water and told it wasn't holy, just cold and clean. He set the monitor down. He put the phone face down beside it. He breathed 4 in, 6 out, the way he'd seen her do without counting. From the nursery, a short sleep noise curled out, the tiny protest of a brain organizing dreams. He didn't lunge. He let the promise hold. He drifted to the rocker and, before he knew it, sat with his elbows on his knees, forehead on clasped hands, eyes burning in a way that had nothing to do with bourbon. He saw Lauren as she had been in the photo on the landing, denim jacket, sun, Ava's breath dampening her shirt, and for once the picture did not pierce him. It felt like a window instead of a blade. Downstairs, the kitchen's digital clock stepped from 2:58 to 2:59. In the laundry room, a dryer light blinked. And somewhere beyond the hedges, the Hudson moved in the dark, unbothered, as it had under other people's nights and other people's mercy. The mansion, finally, learned how to be quiet without being empty. Just before sleep took him in the rocker, Ethan realized what had changed most. It wasn't that the twins had stopped crying, though they had. It was that someone in this house had chosen to be with their pain instead of wrestle it into silence. Attachment, not technique, he thought, remembering the nanny's parting words, and felt the thought land and stay. He woke an hour later to a monitor that showed 2 still bodies and 1 square of cloth between them, darker than the sheet, exactly where small hands could find it if they needed proof in the dark that the world was shared. Morning didn't so much arrive as reveal what night had repaired. Sun pooled on the nursery rug in pale squares. The monitor stayed quiet. Ethan stood in the doorway, feeling a strangeness he almost didn't recognize, nothing to fix. Downstairs, the espresso machine made a soft, civilized cough and Mrs. Delgado whispered an involuntary, "Gracias a Dios," to no one in particular. The twins woke like different children, still themselves, just not on fire. Ava sat up, hair stuck to one cheek, thumb inspecting the edge of the little embroidered cloth. Jack blinked the gummy kind of blink that means sleep lingered and might come back later if handled with respect. When Ethan lifted them, their bodies didn't flinch for a fight. They poured over his shoulders the way toddlers do when they believe the person holding them will outlast their need. In the kitchen, oatmeal steamed, berries sweat into their bowls, and the house smelled like food instead of polish. Emily moved through the space with a quiet choreography, opening drawers she already knew, laying 2 spoons on the table with the bowls facing toward small hands. She wiped the high chair buckles before buckling them, not because they were dirty but because clean buckles are a promise kept. Mrs. Delgado hovered, trying not to hover. "They slept?" she said, as if reporting a sunrise. "They did," Emily answered, rinsing her hands, drying them longer than necessary. "We'll thank the routine, not luck." Ethan sat, one child on each knee, a configuration he hadn't managed in months without someone crying. "What did you?" he began, then stopped because the question felt too small. He tried again. "Tell me what to keep the same." Emily nodded, a little relieved to be asked in the daylight. "Light low. Mobile off at night. Doors not fully shut, an inch is fine. Put the monitor down, don't hold it. 4 minutes of humming before any words. And let one soft thing bridge them." She glanced at the square of cloth now tucked into Ava's fist. "We'll make a few more so there's always one within reach." "How?" Ethan asked. "With fabric that already means something," she said. "I can wash them with the twins things so they smell like here, not store. If you have anything of Lauren's that feels right, we can stitch a piece inside the seam. It doesn't have to show." He felt the air thin. No one had said Lauren's name in this kitchen since the funeral casseroles. He swallowed. "I kept some things." He didn't say, "I haven't touched the boxes because the tape on them is the only thing holding me in one piece." After breakfast, the house exhaled. A gardener killed the blower on sight of the note Emily had taped to the mudroom door. "Nap hours 1 to 3, please," written in block letters that made a boundary feel like kindness. The chef lowered the vent fan to its lowest setting and switched to a wooden spoon. Someone, probably Emily, had moved the doorbell chime volume from estate to apartment. Ethan carried the twins to the den where daylight made dust look like snow. Boxes that had arrived promising enrichment sat stacked like polite, expensive failures. Emily ignored them. She pulled a cardboard shipping carton from recycling and set it on the rug. "Tunnel," she told Jack, who didn't know the word but understood the invitation. He pushed it over Ava's toes and grinned when it made a tube of her feet. She tapped the side with her spoon. Oatmeal, not music, and they both laughed. The house had never heard that sound come from both children at the same time. "Simple beats busy," Emily said without looking up, as if quoting a handbook the world had mislaid. Mid-morning, while the twins banged safe wooden blocks against the floor with priestly seriousness, Ethan led Emily down the back hall to a closet he hadn't opened in months. He set a banker's box on the bench and cut the tape like a man opening a letter he'd been afraid to read. The denim jacket from the picnic photo lay on top, softer now from waiting. Beneath it, a cotton t-shirt that smelled, impossibly, faintly like the drawer it used to live in. "Not the jacket," he said too quickly. "Not yet." "Of course," Emily said, already reaching for the t-shirt instead, thumb testing the hem where fabric is strongest. "A 1-inch square is plenty." She didn't ask for scissors. She waited for Ethan to hand them to her so he could be the person who permitted the past to touch the present. He cut a small piece, hands steady until they weren't. Emily set the square on her palm like something living. "We'll tuck it inside, where only they and the cloth need to know," she said. She threaded a needle at the laundry room counter while the dryer hummed and a bottle of unscented detergent watched like a chaperone. Her stitches were small and plain. "Invisible mending," she murmured, but she meant the other kind. By nap time, the house knew what to do. Shade drawn to the same seam. Lamp clicked to its lowest notch. The embroidered cloth with its hidden square placed at the line between cribs. Emily hummed for 4 minutes because she'd decided 4 was the shape of today. Words later. Presents first. Ava's breath found the beat. Jack's heels didn't thump even once. Ethan stood in the doorway and, for the first time, did not count his failures. He counted the seconds between tiny sighs and realized there was nothing to fear in numbers anymore. Downstairs, Emily printed a 1-page routine for Mrs. Delgado: evening order, bath, dim, lullaby, cloth, sleep, and a second page labeled Dio knots. No bleach on anything that touches skin, no citrus polish on the nursery dresser, no dryer sheets anywhere ever. At the bottom she added, "If they cry, we don't rush, we return." Same voice, same steps. Babies don't measure minutes, they measure promises. Mrs. Delgado read it the way a person reads a recipe that might save a marriage. "We can do this," she said, setting it on the corkboard like a proclamation. Early afternoon, the sky went pewter and rolled its shoulders. The forecast had promised a thunderstorm, the sort that turns the Hudson's slate and makes planes choose another route. The first far-off rumble slid through the house like a rumor. Jack paused mid-block. Ava's eyebrows made a small tent. Emily crouched. "That sound is the sky saying I'm here," she narrated, calm as if she were describing the color of an apple. "It won't come inside." She put their hands flat on the floorboards. "Feel how the house is steady?" She looked up at Ethan, a silent aside, "Name it, and it shrinks." "Sky," Ethan said, obedient, almost smiling. "We hear you." During the twins' second nap, he poured 2 glasses of water in the study because coffee would have been a confession of living on fumes. Emily took the edge of the visitor chair, sitting like someone ready to stand if called. "I owe you more than a raise," he said. "I owe you sleep, I guess." "You owe them sameness," Emily answered, not unkind. "And yourself permission to be the kind of tired that ends." He studied her, curiosity finally outrunning grief. "Where did you learn this?" Emily looked at the window, at the way rain had begun writing small diagonal lines on the glass. "There was a trailer outside Lima, Ohio, the size of this room. My dad fixed carburetors until people stopped having cars old enough to need carburetors. My mom poured coffee at a place that called itself a diner because it had a counter. My little sister, Lily, had a winter of lungs that wouldn't stay open." She smoothed the t-shirt seam of her scrub top with her thumb, a habit she probably didn't know she had. "My grandmother said humming might make your own chest remember how. Maybe it only reminded us. Either way, it kept us from feeling alone." "I'm sorry," Ethan said, because there was no other word that didn't make a claim he had no right to make. Emily shrugged once, the smallest lift. "Grief taught me that quiet is a tool, not a void." They didn't speak for a minute. The house did not require them to. Rain found its groove. Somewhere, a sump pump woke with purpose. By late afternoon, the storm began to muscle up, the kind with thunder that counts its way toward you. Emily taped a second note, this one on the inside of the nursery door: "Busy is for day. Night is for safe." It wasn't for the twins. It was for the grown-ups. Mrs. Delgado caught Ethan on the landing with her tablet open to the household calendar. "Reminder," she said gently. "You're due in San Francisco tomorrow for the board meeting. The car is booked for 5 a.m. Travel had once been the way Ethan outran anything sticky. He looked toward the nursery where 2 small backs rose and fell in the rhythm of a solved equation. "I can cancel," he said, surprising himself with how quickly he meant it. "You could," Emily said from the hall, having heard only the last word and responding as if he'd invited counsel. "Or you could go, and we can keep the promises here. If the routine holds when you're gone, it will hold when you're tired. That's the point. I can't ask you to stay overnight," he said, "because there are lines even in houses this big. You're not asking, she said. You're hiring. For 2 nights. She held his gaze without heat. I'll sleep on the nursery rug if I have to. But I don't think I will. He nodded, the relief embarrassing and necessary. 2 nights, he said. And then we recalibrate. Evening came with the storm shouldering up against the windows. The house dimmed without drama. Bath, dim, hum, cloth. The mobile slept. The door stayed open an inch. Ethan set the monitor on the chair and walked away on purpose. Downstairs, he packed a carry-on that didn't try to swallow his whole life. When thunder cracked overhead, the monitors showed 2 small startles and then 2 small hands finding 1 small square of fabric in the dark. Ethan exhaled. The board meeting would get the version of him that slept. Upstairs, rain gathered itself for 1 hard hour over Westchester. In the nursery, the routine held like a keel. Then, at 11:12 p.m., the house flickered, went black, and the storm made the kind of sound that turns distance into here. The monitor screen died to a blank square. In the dark, somewhere between thunder and memory, a child took a breath to choose between fear and trust. The outage arrived like a hand over a mouth, 1 blink, and the house went to 0. The monitor on the rocker died into a black square. The nightlight quit. Thunder rolled on top of the roof like a barrel pushed by giants. Ethan's body remembered the old drill. Rush, flip all the switches, flood the room with proof. But Emily's voice threaded the dark before he moved. Stay, she whispered, already stepping past him. We'll keep it gentle. She lifted her phone and pointed the flashlight not at faces but at the ceiling, letting the beam bounce until the whole room held a faint, steady wash. No hard shadows. No interrogation. She nudged the door open the width of 2 fingers so the cooler hallway air could breathe into the heat panic leaves behind. Ava made the first sound, a high, thin intake that could become a siren if fed. Jack's body went stiff, a plank between fear and fury. Emily crouched between the cribs and laid both forearms along the rails so her presence touched what they could feel. She didn't speak. She hummed, the same round, low note as last night, a human generator with no cord to trip over. Lightning flashed, thunder cracked on its heels. Emily counted out loud, not to measure distance but to borrow time. 1, 2, 3. She breathed, setting the rhythm she wanted them to borrow. We can count together. Ethan hovered at the rocker, every muscle asking for orders. He watched her reach into her pocket and bring out a second square of cloth, twin to the first, wildflowers stitched just as imperfectly. She had made it that afternoon from the cotton t-shirt he'd handed her, a secret stitched inside the seam the twins would never see but always know. She warmed the new cloth between her palms and slid it to the line between mattresses so 4 small hands could find 2 soft anchors without a fight. Hi, Ava. Hi, Jack, she said at last, voice even, as if they were at breakfast. The sky is practicing being loud. The house is choosing to be quiet. She matched breath to tone to tap, fingertips on the crib rail, a slow lube, dub, dub that set a metronome outside their bodies until the inside ones could catch it. Ava's mouth softened first. Her hand fumbled for the cloth, caught a corner, and pushed her cheek against it. Jack's eyes stayed wide, but the furious plank of his body loosened into knees. Another lightning sheet, another thunder body slam. Emily didn't flinch. We hear you, Sky. She narrated, for them and, Ethan realized, for him. We're safe in here. Somewhere in the basement, the automatic generator coughed like an old dog deciding whether to get up. Emily lifted her palm toward the nursery lamp and rested it over the shade before the power returned, a living dimmer in case the lamp came back at full glare. The generator caught, the house hummed awake. The lamp blinked to its lowest notch, exactly where she'd left it. Nothing rushed. Nothing jumped. The night simply resumed the softer version of itself she'd negotiated. Why do they follow your breathing? Ethan asked softly, the questions slipping out because the room could afford language again. Bodies like to sink, Emily said, keeping her eyes on the twins. When ours stays slow, theirs can borrow it. Same with hearts. Same with the room. She tapped the rail once more and let the beat fade only when both children's chests climbed and fell in the pace she'd set. Ava's eyelids drifted down, popped up, and drifted again. Jack tested a whimper the way a hand tests a doorknob. Finding it unnecessary, he let it go. Emily didn't leave right away. She stayed long enough to catch the tiny false start jerks that come after a scare and smoothed the sheet near the cloth. Not the child, never the child. So the comfort belonged to the bed, not to her. In the hallway, with the door left open 1 inch by design, Ethan let out the breath he hadn't noticed holding. "I was going to flood the lights," he admitted, half to confess, half to thank. "Bright makes the dark feel like an enemy," Emily said. "We want the dark to feel like a room the lights forgot, not a different planet." They walked to the kitchen the way you leave a church, quiet, careful with your feet. Rain pounded the slate terrace. The generator's steady thrum sat under the weather like a bass note. Emily took a sheet of printer paper from the drawer and wrote storm routine in block letters, then listed what she had just done as steps. Not magic. Phone light to ceiling, door open 1 inch, lamp low, hum first, count lightning, cloth between, tap a heartbeat, narrate safety. "For Mrs. Delgado," she said. "And for whoever draws the short straw tomorrow when the doorbell rings." Ethan stood with his hands flat on the island, palms taking in the grain as if absorbing instructions by touch. "You think I should still fly?" "I think the routine should work whether or not you're here," she said, not unkind. "They need your love. The routine is the bridge." "What do you need to make this work?" he asked, giving her the authority she'd been using responsibly all night. "A laundry bag just for their sleep things. A basket in the nursery so the cloth never goes missing. A roll of painter's tape, so we can tape over light switches people reach for on reflex. And one of your worn t-shirts for a third cloth." She tilted her head. "Also, an emergency contact who answers phones, not voicemail trees. Mrs. Delgado has my mother's number," he said. "She'll pick up. She has a way of liking rules when they help people." Emily smiled with one corner of her mouth, then went practical. She walked upstairs to the nursery and taped a piece of blue painter's tape over the wall switch. "Not at night," the Sharpie declared, with a smiley face so it felt like a friend, not a rule. She labeled a small rattan basket. "Soft thing lives here," and set it on the dresser. She put a folded t-shirt of Ethan's beside the sewing kit on the laundry counter like a promise about to be kept. The storm kept hammering. At 12:07 a.m., thunder cracked hard enough to rattle the window panes. On the monitor, both twins startled upright, hands searching. Before Ethan could rise, 4 fingers found 2 squares of cloth. 2 small bodies collapsed onto pillow muslin with the theatrical size children give when the world does what they wanted it to. "They did it without me," Ethan said, surprised by the warmth of pride and how different it felt from relief. "They did it with the room." "Exactly," Emily said. "That's how we know it's theirs." The rest of the night unspooled in ordinary pieces that looked, to Ethan, like miracles because they were made of the opposite of drama. At 1:40 a.m., the generator hiccuped. Nothing changed in the nursery. At 2:10, a branch scraped the window like a visitor. Emily's hum met it at the threshold and sent it away. At 3 o'clock, the house settled in a series of old house creaks. The routine took those noises and made them part of the furniture. Around 4, Emily brewed weak tea and slid a yellow index card across the island. Overnight checklist, it read. Lamp set low. Door 1 inch. Phone face down. Monitor on chair. Hum 4 minutes. Count after lightning. Cloth between. Return if they cry. Same steps. Same voice. She had drawn a tiny square at the bottom and written, "If you wake at 2 a.m., you are allowed to breathe in for 4, out for 6, and not make it a test." "You wrote one for me," he said. "Grown-ups measure promises too," she said. At 4:45, Ethan's alarm vibrated. He showered without rushing for the first time in a year and chose a navy suit that didn't feel like armor. He buckled his carry-on with the absent-minded economy of a man who has packed in airports enough to do it blind. At the front door, he hesitated, keys in his hand, the old ache unfurling, and found a small square of paper taped to the jamb at eye level, written in the same block letters. Night is for safe. Day is for brave. He huffed a breath that almost became a laugh. You're very good at signs, he told Emily, who was laying out breakfast bowls like prayer beads. Signs keep people from tripping over what they already know, she said. Then she added softer. Text when you land. Not because I need it, because your brain will. He looked toward the stairs, toward the doorway left open an inch by design, and went up on quiet feet. He stood between the cribs and watched two small backs rise and fall in a pattern that matched nothing but itself. He didn't kiss them. He didn't risk waking what they had earned. He set his palm flat on the mattress frame between the beds and let his own breath join the room's for a few long seconds, a private vow with no words in it. The car idled in the circular drive, headlights carving pale commas into the rain. Mrs. Delgado handed him a thermos and a packet of ginger chews, her way of loving a person without smudging his lapel. We'll keep to the paper, she said, patting the checklist on her tablet. And we'll text your mother if we need a grandmother. Thank you, Ethan said, and meant, for staying, for believing in written things, for giving my children a language to sleep by. In the back seat, as the driver nosed them down the long, wet hill toward the parkway, Ethan's phone buzzed once. A photo waited, 2 cribs, 2 small shapes, 1 shared square of embroidered wildflowers exactly between them. The caption under it was 3 words, same promises held. He tucked the phone face down beside him and watched the Hudson flash silver under the storm, a ribbon practicing sunrise. Behind him, a big house with generator hum learned to be quiet without being empty. Ahead of him, the board meeting waited with problems money might actually solve. Somewhere in the middle, at 11:12 p.m., his family had rehearsed trust and gotten it right. What none of them saw, what the camera on the front gate would catch 2 hours later, was a delivery truck stopping in the rain and leaving a thin, flat package at the door, return address from a law firm in San Francisco, Ethan's name on the label in a hand he knew. Morning came rinsed and clean, the storm wrung out of the sky. The generator clicked off with a relieved sigh, and the house settled into a quiet that felt earned, not empty. Emily moved through the kitchen with a practiced hush, kettle on, bowls out, fruit rinsed and cut into quarters that fit toddler fists. On the corkboard, her storm routine sat beside evening order like 2 recipe cards that made a home rise. The twins woke slow and whole. Ava sat up first, hair in defiant curls, the little wildflower cloth wedged under her cheek like a passport. Jack blinked, grabbed for the other square, and patted it twice as if checking for its heartbeat. When Ethan lifted them, they melted over his shoulders, heavy with trust. He felt the difference in his own body, no surge of dread, just the ordinary fatigue of a father who'd slept and could do this again. Downstairs, oatmeal steamed. Emily buckled the twins into their high chairs, wiped the buckles out of habit, and slid bowls in with the spoons pointing inward for small hands. Day is for brave, she said mildly, almost to herself, glancing at the note she'd taped to the door. Mrs. Delgado came in from the entry hall holding her tablet and a small flat parcel, brown paper wrinkled from rain. Doorcam shows a delivery at 6:11 a.m., she reported. Courier left it under the portico. Return address is a law firm in San Francisco. Harriman and Lowe. Ethan wiped banana off Jack's wrist with an economy he hadn't earned until last night. His eyes went to the label. The printed firm name was expected. The handwritten E. Cole. Above it, sharp, left-leaning, a flourish in the sea, kicked him in a place under his ribs. It looked like a hand he could have drawn from memory. Don't open it, he said, more quickly than he meant to. Please. I'll go by their office after the board meeting. Mrs. Delgado nodded, relief visible. She disliked opening other people's letters except in emergencies, and legal envelopes never felt like casseroles. She set the parcel on the console table where the house keys lived, aligned with the grain like a small decision made well. After breakfast, Emily wheeled the twins in the double stroller down the back path. The storm had left the lawn luminous and the air honest. Puddles collected in the slate seams like coins. Find the sky in the water, Emily said, pointing to a reflection. Ave appeared, then slapped the puddle and laughed at the sky breaking. Jack tried to eat a maple seed. Emily issued a gentle no and handed him a dry leaf with a fogged vein instead. Texture, not snack, she narrated, because naming a thing's job calmed both of them. On the porch, a neighbor from 2 houses down, widow, border of sarcasm, soft with dogs, lifted a hand. Good morning, she called. That thunder last night. My beagle tried to re-enlist. Her gaze slid to the stroller, softened, then slid back to Emily. You've got the touch, she said, not as flattery but as recognition. We're practicing promises, Emily answered. Small ones? Repeated. By 9, the house was calibrated, doorbell volume low, blinds set to calm. The dishwasher delayed to nap hours. Emily taped another small sign inside the nursery. Busy for day / safe for night. Then tucked the marker behind the picture frame like a wand you only used for good spells. She set a shallow rattan basket on the dresser labeled, Soft Thing Lives Here. Placed the 2 cloths inside for daylight, and laid out a 3rd blank square of cotton beside her sewing kit, one more promise in progress. Ethan showered, shaved, and assembled the version of himself that could walk into a conference room without feeling like an actor. The navy suit fit better when you weren't holding your breath. Text when you land, Emily reminded him. Not for me. For your brain. He almost smiled. Yes, ma'am. The ride to JFK was wet, slick, and fast. On the highway, Ethan scrolled the board deck with a steadiness last year had taken from him. When anxiety nicked him from the side, he did the thing Emily had named, 4 in, 6 out, not as a test. He landed at SFO with a body that belonged to him, not to panic. The board meeting was the usual ritual of performance and triage. A junior partner's voice had corners, the CFO's slides had too many decimals, and someone had brought pastry that flaked like bad faith. Ethan did the work, asked for the single number that told the truth, moved 2 agenda items into a single decision, said no to a shiny acquisition because it would put debt in the place he needed steadiness. He noticed that his hands didn't tremble when he lifted the water glass. He noticed that he could hear the room without drowning in its noise. At lunch, while the others traded war stories about valuations and vacation homes, Ethan slipped his phone from his pocket. A photo waited from Mrs. Delgado. 2 toddlers on the rug in the den, 1 cardboard shipping carton turned into a tunnel, 2 cloths tucked nearby like loyal pets. Caption: Nap in 12 / same steps. He typed back, land side OK / visiting H and L after, and felt the pleasing click of decisions aligning to themselves. Harriman and Lowe's lobby didn't look like anyone's idea of comfort. Frosted glass, steel planters, a receptionist whose headset said don't explain it twice. Ethan gave his name, and the receptionist's posture did a subtle shift, the way people adjust when a file has a note beside it. We've been expecting you, she said, not theatrically. Ms. Harriman can see you now. Her office had one mercy, a window over the bay, fog rolling in like an old dog curling onto a familiar couch. Janine Harriman was 50, sharp-eyed, the kind of competent that doesn't need to be announced. She shook his hand once and sat without touching the pen that lay perfectly perpendicular to the yellow legal pad. Mr. Cole, she said, I'm very sorry for your loss. We held a letter in trust per your wife's instruction. Release date was 1 year from her passing or upon your request thereafter. We attempted to coordinate delivery yesterday, but the courier delayed until this morning due to the storm. She slid a thin folder across the desk. On top lay an envelope with his name in a hand that had written grocery lists on Tuesdays and notes and lunchboxes and once a vow that nothing but the unexpected would separate them. He could have opened it in the hallway. He asked to sit. Janine nodded and turned slightly toward the window, making herself a witness without becoming an audience. Ethan loosened his tie because oxygen is not a luxury. He slit the envelope with a practiced thumb. The paper inside had weight. Lauren's handwriting was the same, brisk, left-leaning, letters that looked like they had somewhere to be. If you are reading this, Then we did the thing every smart person says we should do and nobody wants to. We planned for the part of the story we didn't want to write. If I'm gone a year and you're still breathing, I need to tell you some things I learned faster than you did. You don't have to fix the nights. Be inside them. If the twins cry, don't let the house argue with the dark. Make it a room the lights forgot, not an enemy. Humming is not silly, it's a bridge. Put something soft between them that smells like a person, not a store. Take a shirt of mine and cut it into hidden squares. Tuck them into the seams so the comfort belongs to the bed, not to a hero. I know you. You will try to be a hero. Please be a father. Hire warmth. Promote compassion. Pay for steadiness. If the routine works without you, it will work when you're tired. That's not a failure. That's a family. There's a small fund I set aside with Janine. It's boring and safe, exactly like sleep. Use it to keep whoever brings quiet in our house. Not because I don't trust you with money, because I want you to trust yourself with help. You have permission. I know you need someone to say it, to love again when love comes knocking like a neighbor with sugar. It won't offend me. It will honor me. Tell the twins I kept the stars on their ceiling in case the clouds get loud. Tell them I loved their fists, and their feet, and the way Jack pretended to be angry because the world should respect him. Tell Ava to clean up after Art, and to keep making it anyway. You don't have to keep my jacket. But if you do, please stop pretending the boxes are holding you together. They're just tape. You are the part that holds. L. Under her name, 3 tiny X's and a doodle of a crooked wildflower, the same childish looped petals Emily had stitched by hand without knowing the source. Ethan let the letter sit in his lap until his eyes could do their job again. He swallowed more air than dignity, then managed. She thought of everything. She thought of you, Janine said, with the professional respect of a person who has seen both the worst and the best of what people do for each other in conference rooms with doors that close. There is a trust, as she mentioned. She slid another paper forward. It's modest by your standards and generous by anyone else's. Designated for in-home childcare and household continuity, her wording. It cannot be diverted to business expenses or real estate upgrades. It can only pay for people. He smiled then, crooked, reluctant, a muscle relearning its job. That sounds like her. There's also this, Janine added, and from the folder she lifted a small zip bag. Inside, a square of cotton with uneven stitching and a faint, almost vanished soap smell. She brought this to me the same day she signed the documents. Said, give it to him when he's ready to understand why it matters. Ethan opened the bag with the care of someone handling something that knows its own way home. The square could have come from the same t-shirt he had cut that morning, as if his life had lined itself up with a map she'd drawn in pencil. I have someone at the house, he heard himself say, feeling the sentence arrive the way you notice rain before you hear it. Not a nanny, she was hired as a housemaid. She hums. She writes signs. She tapes over light switches so people won't panic the room into being a different thing. She calls routines promises. Janine's mouth tipped, almost a smile but mostly approval. Hire warmth. Promote compassion. She quoted back at him, tapping the letter with one perfectly square fingernail. You have legal cover to do the right thing. He left the office lighter in a way that had nothing to do with weight. Outside, the fog had scooted a little toward Oakland. Sunlight made a brief argument for optimism on the water. In the rideshare back to the hotel, Ethan texted Mrs. Delgado. Package understood // back late tonight / please have Emily wait up. He almost added please and then did, because asking kindly cost nothing and said everything. Back east, the day unspooled with its own small stakes. Emily walked the twins after lunch. The street smelled like wet stone and worm castings, a scent toddlers regard as gospel. A city crew chainsawed a fallen limb down the block, and Emily rerouted them before the noise arrived. She didn't want the house to teach the wrong lesson about sudden sounds. At the pediatrician's, a nurse gave shots with superhero band-aids and a tenderness Emily approved of. Count with me, she told Ava. 1, 2, 3. Both twins cried for exactly 14 seconds and then, discovering graham crackers, forgave the world. At 3 o'clock, a woman from the agency arrived unannounced to check in on nanny transition, wearing perfume that made the nursery feel like a department store. Emily met her in the entry and walked her, politely, back outside to talk under the portico, not in the air the twins breathed. "We've got a routine," Emily said, not defensive, just territorial. The woman tried to step around the word. Emily didn't move. "Call Mr. Cole," she said, handing over a card with Janine Harriman's number written under the agency's own, in a neat hand that made new rules sit beside old ones until they could be friends. At home, she laid the third cloth, stitched now with a square of Ethan's t-shirt and a seam so plain it could hold, beside the basket. She washed the first two in the gentle cycle with the sleep sacks and nothing else, so their scent learned only one story. Evening edged in. Bath, dim, hum, cloth. Emily kept the mobile for daytime. Nights would never be a planetarium again. She narrated small facts. "Water is warm, towel is soft, daddy is flying." Not to inform but to wrap the room in sentences that ended without a cliff. The twins slept with the boredom of the well-loved. Ethan's flight east lifted at sunset and flew through a dark that did not feel like an enemy. He read Lauren's letter twice, then turned the overhead light off because she'd asked for darkness to be a room the lights forgot. Somewhere over Nebraska, his phone buzzed once with a photo from Emily. 2 cribs, 2 small shapes, 1 basket on the dresser labeled "Soft Thing Lives Here." The caption, "Same promises, night 2. He typed, "Thank you." She replied with 3 words that surprised him not at all. "Keep breathing, E." What none of them said in text, what waited like a quiet fact in the front hall, was the parcel on the console, moved by Mrs. Delgado from the edge to the center and set beside the spare keys, not to be missed, not to be opened by accident. The camera over the drive had already recorded a second visit, a messenger from the law firm returning, not with papers this time, but with a small envelope addressed by Janine herself. Inside, a single index card. For Emily Carter. From the estate of Lauren Cole. "Thank you in advance for the ordinary." Ethan's red eyes slid into dawn like a bookmark returning to its page. The driveway was still beaded with last night's rain. Hedges dripped in polite intervals. Inside, the house wore the quiet of a place that had worked hard and was being allowed to keep the result. On the console table by the keys sat the flat parcel he already understood, and beside it, a smaller hand-delivered envelope addressed in neat block letters, "For Emily Carter." He took the stairs on soft feet. The nursery door was open 1 inch by design. The lamp glowed its lowest, a promise kept. 2 small bodies breathed in the metered rise and fall of solved arithmetic. Between the cribs, the shared cloth lay exactly where small hands could find it if the world hiccuped. Ethan put his palm on the frame for 3 breaths, 4 in, 6 out, not as a test, and let a thank you go nowhere in particular. Then he backed away. Emily was at the kitchen island, hair knotted high, a faded crewneck under scrub pants, laying out bowls with their spoons pointed inward the way she always did. She looked up, registered him, and smiled the plain, good morning smile of a colleague who has already done the heaviest lift of the day. "You landed," she said. "I landed," he echoed. He held up the small envelope. "Janine sent this. For you." Emily wiped her hands out of habit though they were already dry and took the envelope like it might be warm. Inside was an index card with the clipped efficiency of a lawyer, and the surprising softness of a person who'd read Lauren's letter first. "For Emily Carter. From the estate of Lauren Cole. Thank you in advance for the ordinary. A continuity stipend has been established to fund in-home care that protects routine, sleep, and dignity. Please accept this as an invitation, not an obligation, to keep doing the quiet work that makes a house a home." Behind the card was a single page, formal language, simple terms, 2 years of wages at a rate that respected expertise, health insurance, paid time off that wasn't a rumor, a training allowance for any coursework she chose, infant sleep science, early childhood development, CPR refreshers, and a job title that didn't sound like a costume, family care coordinator. Emily read it twice, once with her eyes and once with the part of her that kept rules on scraps of tape. Her throat worked. "She didn't know me," she said softly. "She knew we'd need you," Ethan said. He set Lauren's letter, the one he'd carried home like a still warm coal, on the island between them. "She wrote this a year ago. It reads like you were already here." Emily pressed the card's edge flat with her thumb as if helping it decide to stay. "I don't take gifts because someone feels sorry," she said, not defensive, just clear. "I take jobs because they're real. This is real," Ethan answered. "With boundaries. With benefits. With days off that actually happen. With a schedule that doesn't eat you. With a door you can close." She exhaled in a small laugh that almost tipped into a sob and didn't. "Okay," she said. "On 3 conditions." She counted them on her fingers, simple as a nursery rhyme. 1. The routine stays the routine even if people visit with opinions. 2. I get to teach whoever covers me to hum before they lecture. 3. You promise to be a dad, not a hero. Ethan nodded, something unknotted behind his ribs. Deal. By 8, the twins were up, Ava a curl-headed declaration, Jack an earnest inventory of the morning with his hands. They accepted oatmeal like a peace accord. Ethan buckled them into the stroller, and took the first lap of the backyard path himself. The lawn smelled like cut mint and wet earth. The sky had that new shirt blue it sometimes wears after a storm. "That's our maple," he told them, pointing. "Those are our birds being loud in a nice way." He surprised himself by liking the sound. Day learned its new steps. Emily put up a weekly schedule on the corkboard. NAP 1 to 3, doorbell LOW, laundry bag, sleep things only, and in smaller print for the grown-ups, no news systems before coffee. Mrs. Delgado read it like scripture and added her own footnote, deliveries to Portico only. The chef slid a tray of cinnamon toast under the broiler and, for the first time since Lauren died, whistled half a tune in the pantry and didn't flinch for it. At lunchtime, Ethan opened boxes he'd avoided, not to drown in them but to harvest. He took a soft white tea that still knew how a drawer smells, cut a 1-inch square with careful hands, and brought it to the laundry room. Emily stitched it into a third cloth while the dryer hummed and the house breathed. "Invisible mending," she said again, and the phrase fit the room as well as the seam. In the afternoon, he sat on the den rug and let a cardboard carton become a tunnel. Jack disappeared into it with the seriousness of a commuter, and re-emerged laughing at his own survival. Ava banged a wooden spoon and discovered rhythm. Ethan found that if he hummed low and steady where Emily could hear him, his own shoulders stopped arguing with his lungs. He showed Emily Lauren's letter. She read with the concentration of a person who doesn't skim when something matters. When she reached the line, "Put something soft between them that smells like a person, not a store," her mouth shaped recognition. At the bottom, beside the 3 tiny X's, was a crooked wildflower doodle, simple petals in a loop. Emily touched it with a finger she would never use without asking in the nursery. "Lily used to draw that," she said, almost to herself. "I guess everybody's grandmother teaches the same flower. Maybe love just draws like love," Ethan said. Evening came without theater. Emily handed the routine back to him the way a good teacher hands the chalk to the class. "You start," she said, stepping into the role of second person, not savior. He dimmed the lamp to the notch his fingers now found without looking. He turned the mobile off and left it on the daytime hook. He cracked the door the width of one finger, then another. He laid the cloth between the mattresses and let his hand rest on the frame so the bed, not he, was the source of steady. He hummed. He counted the nothing space between breaths. When Jack tested a protest, Ethan narrated safety exactly the way Emily had taught. "Hi, buddy. The house is choosing to be quiet. We are safe in here." The words felt less like a script and more like his. Emily stood at his shoulder, present but not in front. Mrs. Delgado waited in the hall, tablet in hand, unneeded and thrilled to be unneeded. The twins surrendered not dramatically but completely, the way children do when the world keeps its side of the bargain. On the porch afterward, 2 mugs of tea cooled on the rail. The backyard had the fresh, rinsed look of a place that had cried and eaten and slept and was ready to be ordinary on purpose. Lights from the next street over made a soft constellation through trees. Somewhere, a train moved like a long thought. "I don't know what this becomes," Ethan said finally, not asking, not fishing, just refusing to pretend certainty he didn't have. "Beyond the job. Beyond the fact that my kids breathe easier when you're here, and so do I. It can be what it is today," Emily said. "And tomorrow we do the next ordinary thing. That's the whole magic trick." He nodded, grateful for limits that felt like freedom. "You have Sundays," he said. "All of them. A real day. And a backup who hums, not just knows the passwords. We'll pay for her training." Emily lifted her mug. "Then I'll take a class on toddler brains and a CPR refresher and one afternoon nap in a hammock," she said. "In that order." They both smiled, and it didn't hurt anyone. Later, after lights out, Ethan stood once more at the nursery door, now open 1 inch because night doesn't need to be shut in. The cloth lay in its place. The basket on the dresser, labeled "Soft Thing Lives Here," held the other two like patient friends. The lamp hummed at its lowest. 2 small backs rose and fell. He whispered, so quiet it was only for him. "Your mom kept the stars for cloudy nights. We'll keep the rest." On his way down, he paused at the corkboard. Emily had added one more line, smaller than the rest, almost shy: "Night is for safe. Day is for brave." And under it, in a hand he knew so well from sticky notes and grocery lists, and that letter still warm in his pocket, a crooked wildflower, 3 loops, a stem, a leaf, drawn by someone who had planned for this part of the story not because she wanted it, but because she loved them enough to make sure it could be lived. He took a picture, not for sharing, just for proof, and slipped the phone back into his pocket face down. Upstairs, the house, finally, had learned the difference between silence and peace. Downstairs, on the console, the index card for Emily and the letter for Ethan waited where they would always be reachable and never be the only thing that mattered. He turned off the hall light with 2 fingers. The dark felt like a room the lights forgot. From the nursery, a tiny sleep noise curled into the air, checked to make sure the promise still held, and finding it intact, settled.